Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday night's Facebook Live crafting. I hope you've all had a lovely day. It's been really grotty here. I did think I was going to have to cancel tonight because the rain was really coming down earlier and the noise in here was awful. But luckily it has stopped raining and it's nice and quiet in here, thankfully. So I'm just setting you all up on my iPad so I can see comments. Training. Turn you off. 2 seconds. Let's have a look. Where can I see comments? Okay, so a few people have joined already. Thank you very much. I hope you're all okay. So tonight I'm going to be using quite a few new products actually. I've got the Tasteful Touches Stamp Set, which is really, really lovely. It comes as a bundle with the Tasteful labels dies. There's a whole different host of labels there. And my new favourite, which came yesterday and I'm really excited, is Pattern Play. Pattern Play coordinates with the new Playful alphabet dies. This light here is really annoying, isn't it? I'm just going to turn that up a bit. That's better. So the Playful alphabet dies, which look like this. It looks like a puzzle, and I'll show you those as we go on. So 2 cards this evening for you, and I've chosen to use one of my favourite in colours. They're all my favourite really, which is Misty Moonlight. I'm a huge Night of Navy fan, so this Misty Moonlight just speaks to my heart and my soul. So let's get cracking. So I have 2 cards this evening. We'll start with this one because it's a little bit messy. Love a bit of messy crafting, you know me. So we have here a card base, and this is using Misty Moonlight. So it's cut from a piece of A4 cardstock. So we'll just fold that in half. We don't need that just yet. And then I have here a piece of Whisper White card, which is for the inside of our card. This measures 10 centimetres by 14.4, so we need that piece for our inside. I have a Whisper White label, which comes from the Tasteful labels dies. I have a piece of Misty Moonlight card, bit of scrap, and we're going to cut our letters out of that. And then I have here a piece of Fluid 100 watercolour paper, which is what we're going to use to create our stripes. So let's get to cracking. So to create our stripes, we will need our Misty Moonlight ink pad, and we're going to give it a little squeeze. Squeeze, 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 so that we get some ink in the lid. Then we're going to use an Aqua Painter. These are actually retired. There are new ones in the catalogue. I think they're called water brushes. They haven't arrived yet. They're in my order. So as soon as they arrive, I will show you those. So these are the old ones. Mine are really well used, so I prefer to use mine just with a cup of water. So my lovely designer IKEA children's cup. I'm just loading it up with water, and then I just want to make sure I've got a nice amount of ink here. But before I do that, there is something else I need to do. So I need to grab my spritzer. So this is just a stamping spritzer. It's filled with water, and I'm just lightly going to, 2 seconds, that's better. I'm just lightly going to spritz. It just dampens your card a little bit, and it means you get a real nice water finish. So now I'm just going to use my brush. So I'm going to hold that down, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the ink across. So they're not completely straight, these lines. They're all very different. And all I'm doing is going from one way to the other. If you want, I think you need a bit more water, just pick up a bit more on your brush. So there we have our lines. Now that's a little bit damp, so I'm just going to quickly dry that using my heat tool. Just hold that down and you'll see that go lighter. Just like that, so that looks dry to me. Now what you can do is, if you wanted to have a little bit more ink in there, all you need to do is just go in again. So some of these are quite light, so just drag that ink over. And just until you're happy with it. So just when you're happy with those colours, just again a little bit of heat to set that. So you just get some more watercolour marks by doing that. So now I'm quite happy with that now, so I'm just going to close my ink pad before I get ink everywhere. So that is our lovely watercoloured stripes. Love that. So I'm just going to see. Okay, so now we can bring in our card base, move our little sheet of tissue paper out the way, and now we can mount this onto the front of our card. So for that I'm going to use a little bit of Tombow. Because this paper is obviously watercolour paper, it's porous, I tend to use a bit more Tombow than I normally would. Okay, so you'll see there's quite a bit there. So now just lay that on your card, and you don't want to push down too firmly because you don't want the Tombow to squidge out of the sides. So just be quite gentle and just make sure that is stuck down. Okay. So there we have our lovely stripes. So now what we can do, we can start building up our sentiment area. So these are the Playful alphabet dies. They're a great size, I'm really excited about these. And I love how they're presented on this sheet. So what I've done, a little tip, is before I've taken any of them off, I've drawn round them. But actually, what Stampin' Up have done, and I didn't realise this till after, is they've actually put on the lines of where those dies should be. So although I've done it, I do tend to do that before I remove any of my dies. The lines are already there as a guide, so don't panic too much about that. So these dies, you do get a couple of duplicate letters. So I've got the word hello, so I'm just going to quickly run that through my big shot on my little trusty trolley behind me. So I'm cutting these out of Misty Moonlight cardstock. So I've just got a little bit of scrap here. Okay, so here we have our little dies, so we can just pop those out. Okay, they're super fiddly, but they are well worth the effort. I think so anyway. Oh, he's stuck in there. I'm just going to pop these little dies back over the other side. So we have hello. So now I can bring in my label. So hello. So what is coming next week in my next order is some foam adhesive sheets. So what that means is They are sheets of Stampin' Dimensionals that haven't been cut, so you can actually run your letters through and then layer them up. So until that arrives, I'm just carefully adding little drops, little dots of Tombow. That's it. Almost, I think these dies are going to be great for personalising projects because they're a lovely size. I think we're going to see a lot of name cards, and I just think they were going to look really, really fab. Okay, so we have our hello, just move them down a bit. There we have it. And then I have a stamp called Sure Do Miss You, or it says Sure Do Miss You. This comes from the Blossoms in Bloom stamp set, the one I've been using a lot this week, and I think it's really, really sweet. So I'm just adding this little sentiment beneath the hello, and then now we can actually stick that onto the front of our card. So just like so. Just adding a few little dimensionals onto the back of this pad, with its label even, and then we can pop that on there. Now I think that looks cute just like that, really nice, but of course we want to add a little flower. So up here I need my scraps box. So I now have the lovely flower, which I'm going to stamp in Misty Moonlight. Love the way these colours coordinate. And the detail on that stamp is just so pretty. I was tempted to colour it, but actually I don't think you need to. There's so much detail there. I think if you were to colour it, especially for something like this, you would kind of lose some of that detail. But that said, I am looking forward to colouring this in, which I'm sure you'll see another time. It's a bit of fussy cutting. Cut this out, so I'm just following the edge, and I'm just following it, but I'm not cutting on the line. I'm cutting just after it, so that you leave a little bit of white around the edge. Okay, almost there. Okay, last little bit and we're done. So that wasn't too long. So then this, now we can pop him just like that. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little dimensional underneath this leaf, this petal, so that it stays raised. Just like so. Okay, and then to finish, I've got some in colour enamel dots. Really loving these. And I'm going to pop one just down there and another one just up here as a little finishing touch. And then inside we have our Whisper White layer. It measures the same size as that watercolour piece, which is 10 centimetres by 14.4. So before we stick that in, I'm going to add a little bit more detail with a bit of stamping to match the front. Okay, so down here, all I'm doing is I'm putting a lovely little flower in that corner to match the front. And now we can stick that in. there we have it. So that is our finished card number 1. So we've got some lovely watercolour stripes that we've created with some watercolour paper and just a water brush. It's all in Misty Moonlight, which is one of the new in colours. I've got this lovely label die here. The hello letters have come from the new alphabet dies that are in the catalogue. We've got Sure Do Miss You, and then this really pretty flower that comes from the Tasteful Touches Stamp Set, and another one inside just for luck. So that's card number 1 finished this evening. So interestingly, this watercolour paper here is actually the old watercolour paper we used to do. I had a bit left over, so I thought, why not, let's use that. But actually, when you compare it to the new watercolour paper, the Fluid 100, it's a lot smoother and you get a much nicer, crisper finish. So I thought it would be good to show you the little comparison there, because a lot of people have said, well, I can just use any old watercolour paper, and I'm sure you can, but this is a comparison between the old watercolour paper we used to do and the new. So much nicer, crisper finish, I think. And it feels whiter as well, which means it looks that little bit better with the Whisper White card that I've used here. What do we think? Let me know your thoughts. Always love to hear what you think. So our next card I'm a huge lover of stripes, as I've said. So we've got some lovely stripes on this one. And this one here, this speaks to me, this little stripe. I love it. Pattern Play, which is the stamp set that goes with the alphabet dies. So I have here, this is the card we're going to make. So again, I've used a bit of Tasteful Textures. Tasteful Touches, not textures. And I'm going to use the stripes to create this piece here, this Misty Moonlight piece. And then I've got a bit of stamping and fussy cutting there. Okay, so to get us started, I need this right here. I'm just going to grab a stamping mat because I'm using a photopolymer stamp. So just bear with me. Here's a piece I used the other day. So when you're using photopolymer stamp sets, I always like to use a stamping mat. It gives you a better finish with your stamping, and you get it just gives you a bit of give, so it's easier to stamp with. So I need my little strip here. And this grid paper here is our small grid paper that coordinates with the Stamparatus. So it's the same size as the platform there. So this is my lovely stripes. Can you see that? And I'm just going to use this Misty Moonlight ink pad. Now, because the piece of card is only a portion of the stamp, I'm only going to ink up a portion. Otherwise, it's just a waste of ink. So then these lines here, I'm using that top line to line up with the top line of my Misty Moonlight cardstock. So we have like so. And then all I'm going to do is repeat that stamping moving down. So the very top line, the actual rubber, the photopolymer edge of the stamp, I'm lining that up with the bottom line that I've stamped already. Okay, just to keep that nice stripy distance, I would guess, going. Okay, so just keep going until you get to the bottom. I love this. I think I'm going to use this a lot. So let's keep going. Okay, so there we have our lovely striped piece of cardstock, which I think is brilliant. I love a stripe. So we can now put our lovely stripe to one side. And before I go on, I'll show you another piece. So I do love a stripe, as you well know. Here it is in Magenta Madness, on Magenta Madness cardstock. And for those that follow my blog, you'll see that I put these cards on earlier. So this little section in here is what I've used. I've done exactly the same, but I've stamped onto Whisper White rather than Misty Moonlight. So I think those stripes are just stunning. and they look great in any colour as well. So here's the Just Jade, here's Cinnamon Cider, here's Magenta Madness, and here is lovely Bumblebee. So love those stripes. Okay, so we'll get back to what we're doing. We have our piece of Misty Moonlight. Now we can bring in the other pieces that we're using. So I have here a piece of Purple Posy cardstock, and this is our card base. So this is half a piece of A4, like so, and I'm going to just measure where this is going to be roughly, so like so. So now we can bring in our little Flourish stamp, and I'm going to stamp this in Highland Heather. So we don't actually have a Purple Posy ink pad. There were issues with the quality, so rather than Stampin' Up selling bad quality products, they discontinued it. So Highland Heather looks great on this piece of card, on this card. So all I'm doing is I'm just doing this by eye. There's no measurement to it whatsoever. I want these flourishes to look as if they're coming out of here. So all I'm going to do is move that out of the way, and then I'm stamping one, just like so, and then another at the bottom, like that. Okay, so then I also need to stamp another one onto some scrap. That'll do. Because you guessed it, I'm going to fussy cut one out. Okay, let's just stamp that onto our white. And then I have our label here. Oh, we can now stick on our piece of Misty Moonlight. Just pop that on like so, and now our banner. So now we can know that if we pop that about there, when we put our flower on, it'll be nicely hanging off. So the next thing we need to do our stamping. So we need to stamp Just Saying Hello, and I'm stamping that in Misty Moonlight. So again, keeping the colours really, really simple today, and about there. And I need to add a bit of ink splatter. So I'm using a Highland Heather ink pad, stamping blend, and I'm using the felt tip looking end, and I'm just using the lid to just flick some of the ink onto there. Can you see that? You don't have to do that, but it's just a little bit extra detail. And whilst I'm here, I will just do some of this on our card front. Yeah, it's just another texture to add to your cards. So that bit there is done. We can now add our lovely little label. So with a bit of Tombow, adding that there. Now I want this to overhang, so all I'm doing, I'm going to move that up a bit actually, because I want my flower to fit on there. So this piece here, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold it round the card. I could cut it off, but I quite like just folding it round. So there we have our little label on, and now we can stamp our flower. And I wonder if I'll get this one here as well. We'll find out in a second. Yes, I will. So I can now cut out my flower. So now might be a good time to go and have a quick loo break, because I'm going to fussy cut both of these out. again, I'm just following the outline, but rather than cutting on the line, I'm leaving a little white border. I think it just makes it look a bit more finished. And with our dies, they always leave a little white border, so it looks like it's been die cut. Just following that round. Okay, so there we have our little flower, which we can add to our card. I am going to stick that on with a dimensional to give it a little bit of depth. So let's pop that about there. Everything I do is mostly by eye. I don't tend to measure things or do that. I do tend to do things by eye. And then lastly we have our little flourish. So let's quickly cut that out. I don't know why this evening, but I can't really see comments. I've got my iPad in front of me, but they're not popping up. So if you've been commenting and I've obviously not seen it, please don't think I'm being rude, but I don't like not seeing comments. I like to have a little natter with you all. So just getting there. Thank you for being super patient with me. So we're about halfway there with this shape now. Maybe a bit more. It's up to you how detailed you want to be as well. You could cut right down into those leaves. Nearly there, nearly there. So we're not going to see that because it's going to be stuck under our card. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to pop that in there. So again, it's just a little bit of extra detail. You could leave it off because you do have the stamping underneath, but I am going to pop that in just like so. And then, oh, I still need the Misty Moonlight stamp pad. So now I've got a piece of Whisper White. It measures 10 centimetres by 14.4. Before we stick that in, we're going to add another little flower down this bottom. Okay, and then a bit of Highland Heather and our flourish. I'm going to add just a bit there like so to finish it off. I could keep stamping, but I'm thinking less is more. Okay, so there we have finished card number 2 this evening. So I'll just do a little recap for you of card number 2. So I'll bring in my original. So it's not too different at all really. So card number 2, we've got a purple posy background. We've created our own stripy cardstock here using this image here from Pattern Play. We've stamped on the background using some Highland Heather and one of the images from Tasteful Touches, and then we've created this lovely little sentiment using one of the dies from the Tasteful Touches dies, and I've done a bit of ink splatter there, can't really see it, that's better, and then I've stamped and cut out a couple of little images to add to our card front, and then inside we've got a little bit of stamping to finish it all off. So that is me done this evening. Our 2 cards, very different but using similar sort of colours. So on this one we've got Purple Posy and Misty Moonlight, and this one is just Misty Moonlight. So I wanted to show you how to create different stripes, which I hope I've done. I look forward to seeing anyone give that a go. I love to see what you all make. Details of these products will be on my blog in about half an hour's time. And if you have any questions, please do let me know. Don't forget, at the moment you've got the hostess code running throughout throughout June, and for every person that enters it will get a pack of enamel dots sent to them as a free gift from me in July. Have a great evening, enjoy the rest of your week. I hope the weather clears up. We can hope, can't we? And I will see you all very soon. Take care everyone, thanks for joining me, bye.